I don't think it's far-fetched to believe like there could be a potential recession for both countries on the way based on the way this is going.
Just because of the decisions that they're making.
Yeah, because I think people are going to tighten up on spending. GDP is going to be in the tank, and that's going to be on both sides. Americans are going to feel it's just as much, and it's just like you can say it till you're blue in the face, but it's like, he just refuses to listen.
Then do we see inflation get affected?
Welcome to the Ottawa Property Podcast with your hosts Tony McNeil and Adolfo Alvarenga. Each week, they'll take a look at what's happening in the Ottawa real estate market and offer practical advice and insights for listeners. From market updates to success stories, they cover it all. Whether you're a first-time home buyer, a seasoned investor, or just curious about the property landscape in Canada's capital, they've got you covered. Sit back, get comfortable, and let's get into it.
Okay, here we go. Welcome back to another episode of the Ottawa Property Podcast. My name is Tony McNeil. I am a realtor based out of Ottawa, Canada, joined always by my co-host Adolfo Alvarenga, level 2 mortgage agent with referral mortgages based out of Ottawa as well. We are back. Thank you for joining us. If you're listening on the audio platforms, if you're streaming along, give us a like, let us know that you're listening, drop us a comment, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever it is. We read them all and we respond. And we would love to know what you think. If you have any constructive criticism or anything you'd like us to talk about in any other future episodes, we're all ears. So Adolfo, with that being said, welcome back, man.
Welcome back.
The hiatus is over.
It's been, we took a quick break, eh?
Yeah.
I feel bad for our listeners, our few subscribers that we have right now.
What happened to these guys?
We left them hanging.
Put out an APB for these
What is
guys.
it, three weeks almost?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's been a while. So just to fill everybody in, I got sick, stayed home for a couple of weeks, and then I had a vacation plan.
Tony did the right thing and didn't want to spread the germs, which I appreciate personally.
It's not even about spreading the germs. I obviously don't want to spread the germs, but it's more like selfish in that when I get sick, my brain just can't function in a working environment. I just can't do it. It's like I'll do what I got to do, but in terms of actively growing the business or recording podcasts or prospecting, whatever it is, I can't do it. I gotta rest.
No, and I understand.
The man flu or cold or whatever is very real in our household.
But it's obviously it's the perks of having a toddler at home, and it's like having daycare and like bringing any virus that they can find to bring it home.
Anything and everything.
But it's good on you because like a lot of people don't do that and don't take that break, and you have to. Your body needs to recover.
No, 100%.
You're sick for a reason.
Feeling better now. And couple that with a vacation.
And then I had a trip too.
And then you had a trip to New York.
Yeah, Cuba. I look tanned. I don't know if you can see it on the screen.
About the same skin tone as Adolfo?
Close enough. Close enough.
That's what I said to Leo when I got back. I was like, I'm working on my Honduran look.
Honestly, from the neck up, it actually it's solid.
Yeah, I mean,
here, it's just still a little bit.
I might need new headshots. Brush up on my Espanol.
Yeah, that's
no, it was good. It feels good to be back. I mean, we got a lot to catch up on when you think about it. Like it's just like this 24-hour news cycle with what's going on in our economy, country, and continent. It seems to be ever changing. It is
every day, every week, we said it.
Holy cow.
We said it before,
right? To think about.
We said it before though. Like it's been every day. We go day by day or week by week. In a way, it's like okay, what's gonna happen this week? What's new? Okay.
It's like you can't even go week by week anymore. It's like AM versus PM almost daily. Like it's 9 AM is one thing, 5 PM it's a completely different thing. And just to give context to that, like we're obviously referencing, the fearless leader in the U.S. down there, kind of just going on the seat of his pants and seemingly making it up as he goes. I really don't understand the policy, and it's kind of just it seems like it's more emotion and lack of fiscal policy that he's following down there when it comes to these tariffs that he's sometimes imposing, sometimes not imposing.
The thing with me is like stop saying that you're going to do it and then don't do it, and then like just go with it. If you're gonna do it, go with it. Unless there's or be willing to meet and figure this out in a way that's like you're both there's two winners and not necessarily one winner or a loser at that point. Yeah, and then 100%. That's it. Like just figure that out. Like it just this inconsistency and this nuance of like we don't know what's going to happen is where everybody is like kind of on the fence of everything.
Yeah. And you know what I think? Let's look at it from a negotiation standpoint, because it's something I thought about this week. If you were negotiating for a house, if you were a buyer and you're trying to, purchase a house from a seller, and you went the Donald Trump route and you started like, I'm gonna give you this, no, I'm gonna take this away, I'm gonna do this, no, I'm gonna do that, and you flip flopped, you would piss off that seller to high heaven, man. That guy is not gonna want to work with you.
But to the point that the seller will probably tell you to go.
Oh yeah,
beat it.
Beat it.
Peace out. Lost. Bye. Get lost. I don't care if it takes me another 2 months to sell this property. I would not sell it to
100%. And I feel like if you relate it to what's going on between our two countries now, the sentiment in Canada seems to be exactly that. Like we don't want to, like, we're starting. We did 30 billion in reciprocal tariffs this week imposed on U.S. goods, and that I don't think that's been changed yet because this is all in kind of a preemptive move before the April 2nd tariffs come into fact, and obviously the steel and lumber, steel aluminum tariffs are already in. But yeah, I've just never seen negotiating like this. It kind of doesn't make any sense to me. I spend a lot of time going down the rabbit holes, like probably once in the morning, once in the evening, which I probably shouldn't do before bed. It's like it's like a train wreck. You can't look away. You know what I mean?
It's hard, and it's very hard. It's like everywhere you go, you hear it. Everywhere you see, you hear it. Every email is about news.
100%. And in our industry, we need to be up on this, right? Like obviously people are going to buy and sell. Some will do it because they can. Some will do it because they have to. But whether or not they're paying attention, these are directly and indirectly affecting the way we buy and sell and how our economy is growing in Ottawa.
Totally, and that's when it's interesting you mentioned that because like. I just had a client put in an offer, and we had originally talked about a certain down payment.
Okay.
And then as we got the offer,
what was the original down payment?
$70K.
No, but like percentage wise. Sorry.
About 11, 12% from the purchase price. So we were like estimating it, right? Because we didn't know what the property, what they were going to get the value out of it. So eventually they got the value at a way lower than what we were estimating of like what their max was. And as I'm crunching numbers, I'm looking at it and it's like it's so close to, it's just over 10%, which means that their insurance premium is less already from it being 5%.
Sure.
So from 5 to 9.99%, it's 4% on a premium if you're choosing a 25-year, and it's 4.2 if you're choosing a 30-year AM, right? So on this one, if you pass that, so we were just passing that just barely. So I'm like, it was about a $9K difference that they were wanting to put, and then what the minimum 10% was of that, like what the 10% was, not minimum, but the 10% of it. And
what's that savings in mortgage insurance premium if they put that $9K down extra?
Nothing. Right. Just the value. It's just whatever the mortgage amount, like that $9K difference.
Yeah.
You multiply it times the premium itself, so that the percentage itself doesn't change. It's just the dollar amount would change.
No, that's what I'm saying. What's the dollar amount change on the mortgage insurance premium?
So I don't know the insurance premium one because I don't have that. I have the monthly payment aspect of it.
Okay, sure, go ahead.
So the monthly payment was only $45 a month.
Okay.
That they'd be saving by that $9K. So because of the uncertainty we're currently because of the new expenses that they could get from a new house, from a home,
cash in the bank.
That's what I said. I'm like, look, these are your options. This is your payment with $70K as a down payment. This is your payment with $61K as a down payment. It's up to you, but this is the difference. My suggestion would be keep the cash because right now,
you just don't know.
Cash is king, like that saying goes. Cash is king. As much as you can, keep the cash. And it's $45 extra a month. And she's like, they thought it through. They talked about it like overnight, and they're like, yeah, we'll go with a 61. And I'm like, perfect.
Sure. Yeah, cash in the bank is everyone should have a little bit of a safety net now. I mean. The way that potential layoffs could be coming down the pipe, it seems like already in some of the steel factories, even in Eastern Ontario, there's been, actual layoffs already happen. And whether that means permanent layoffs or 1 week layoffs, like until this mess is kind of like the dust is settled is a better way to put it.
Especially in manufacturing too, right?
Yeah, I mean, it does exist. Like a lot of small town Ontario exists on that thing, right? Yeah. You got one plant or two plants feeding, multiple little towns. And I think we forget about it from an economic standpoint too. Like it's not just one family that you get laid off and they're affected by it. Like we're talking about, okay, they get laid off, so they don't spend money at the grocery stores as much as they would, or they don't spend money at the local restaurants. They don't buy the new car. Like everything shrinks, right? This is not just one level.
It's essentially a domino effect.
Yeah, the ripple effect is there, right?
Yeah,
and I think that's something that we're not really taking into consideration. I mean, fortunately, to some degree, Ottawa, is relatively insulated in that. We're not dependent on one industry.
Luckily.
We're not like Hamilton where it's predominantly steel. We're not like Windsor where it's predominantly automotive. we've got a little bit more insulated economy here based on, government jobs, 2 universities. Like there's a lot of, you've got a tech sector in Canada. Like there's a little bit more going on for sure.
A little bit of everything to an extent.
But it's not to say that we won't feel those pains, right?
No, and I think we totally do. Where I feel we see it the most, or the population in Ottawa sees it the most, is in the groceries and gas prices.
Yeah, fair.
Those are the 2 things that I feel like the most. Even like obviously these are stuff that you can avoid, and right now could be considered a luxury. But going out, the meals and stuff like that, I think we've had this discussion. I don't think going out for 2, you're spending less than $100 in any restaurant.
No, I can't imagine.
Like minimum, it's at least $100 that you're spending.
Yeah. It's crazy. And just to point, you're absolutely right. I think about my days when I used to work at the keg. Love the keg. Still love the keg. Friend last night texted me. He's like, we were gonna do like a group dinner, couples dinner type of thing. And like, he's like, hey, we're kind of thinking the keg. They're like, Tony, would you want to do that? Like, you probably wouldn't, right? And I'm like, no, I want to.
Absolutely.
Like, I love it, man.
Absolutely.
Any chance I get to go. Like, I worked there for like a decade.
Yeah.
It's got a good place in my heart. But I think when I started there, like, you get a steak, a small, sirloin for like less than $30. And I don't think there's any steak on the menu that's less than 50 now.
50.
I bet you if you're a couple and you're going to the keg for 2 steak dinners, a bottle of wine, and like an appetizer or dessert,
200 minimum. I
would say so with tip. Yeah, you're probably over.
Yeah.
Over, depending on your wine choice. Second cheapest bottle of wine is
you go
my
down
recommendation.
Go down the menu. It's like,
You're
okay, not this one, this one.
Never pick the cheapest.
Oh man, imagine on the first day and you look at this one, and it's like the best. Cheapest bottle of wine.
Second cheapest. But no, to your point, you can't go out. You can't. That's just like the dining out. That's groceries too, man.
Yeah. And this is like, it's just wild because like, at what point? And this is the question that I've had in group chats and in friends groups and stuff. Is like, at what point does that become the new norm? Because okay, we have all this trade war, we have all this inflation that's been going on for the last few years. I personally don't think that after all this is done, that we're going to see prices go back down.
No, it's kind of what, inflation is. We've talked about this in many episodes ago and talking about inflation, and that's a great point. Like when things go up, it's very rarely they go down. Like you would really need a deflation for that to happen. Yeah. Inflation slows. I mean, if it's low, it slows the growth of those prices. Especially now if we're looking at a Canada first kind of approach, or like, this overwhelming sense of nationalism that we feel across, or I certainly feel, if you're sourcing local products, you tend to be more expensive, right? Yep. We just don't have the infrastructure that's why we rely so heavily on North American free trade agreements, is because we can feed each other. And then
and it's like you scratch my back, I scratch yours.
And I mean, you got to imagine too, like it's not just north of the border that's feeling this. Like I'm sure there's a lot of border towns and even like, very northern cities and many states in the U.S. that are feeling the exact same way that we're feling right now. They're just not understanding of these tariffs, like why? Because they're going to be the ones
affected directly the most,
right? Yeah. Most of that trade is going to go there. I don't know what the answer is. I just know like it's important to kind of understand, especially from a housing perspective, because when you think about it, steel and aluminum tariffs are in right now. If lumber I think lumber's in. I'm not sure. I have to double check that, but all of those 3 components are heavily affecting the cost to build a home.
Totally. And what we've seen lately the most is developers just don't start the project. Then they just park it.
Exactly.
Because it's more economical for them to just keep that, which I don't understand how, because of the interest on the project itself. But they just park it and say like, okay, or we'll sell it. We'll do it after. We'll ride it out. We'll do it after. Or whatever project they were intending of doing, they're like, no, we won't do this anymore.
And that's just it. Like we've seen like new construction, especially even post COVID, hasn't really corrected that much. Like builders certainly have margins that they need to meet in order to, sell these homes and remain profitable. Like no one's building houses at a loss, right? Yeah. Everyone's in business to make money. That's the nature of the beast. So if the cost of everything goes up, and you think the developer's going to take the hit or the builder's going to take the hit on this? No, it's going to be passed on to the consumer. Yeah. And at which point the consumer is going to say, if a house costs 5 to 20% more than it did last month, they just won't buy. And if they're not going to buy, builders don't build. And then we come back to the root of the problem that we've been talking about forever.
Supply.
Exactly. Supply and demand. Even if immigration numbers come down, we still do not have enough homes. to meet our current demand, even with a relatively insulated population growth within our own current population.
Yeah.
You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah,
like
yeah,
without
yeah.
adding new Canadians, we still can't match it, right? So, you know, I'm worried. I think that's a big kind of canary in a coal mine, like warning that we should all be heeding. Because if this goes on for the next 4 years, like it could really mess things up.
So the question to that though is like, so we're having this supply, this whole trade war. It's kind of affecting the motivation of buyers
Sure.
to purchase
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
But then you also are going to have all these sellers, and obviously all these mortgage renewals come up in this year, and it's like, what do we foresee happening? Because like all I can think of is like right now, it seems like, you know, we were saying people are on the fence, rates are dropping.
Yeah.
I still think that people are going to stay on the fence just to see what's going to happen.
Sure. Yeah.
Just like they don't want to take a risk, and I can understand them of like, okay, we're going to buy a new home, or we're going to upgrade, or no, let's just stay renting right now because we don't know what's going to happen, you know.
Totally.
Like, and
Yeah.
so many things could go, and like you said, like we're going on a day by day aspect of it, and it's like, okay, what are we going to do with this? And as a seller, you're like, do I sell now? And as a buyer, you think of it like, should I wait and keep, you know? So it's like it's kind of in that sense of like,
yeah, it's a bit of a stalemate for sure.
Yeah.
I think, you know, a lot of the conversations I've had this week with potential clients or prospects or even current clients is like, you know, we need a little bit more certainty in where this is going to go, because it's exactly that. Like, even if you bought a house, you know, you're locked in, you have a fixed variable, whatever. Like if your monthly cost goes up in every other aspect of your budget, like your food, your gas, everything is going up. Like, even if the mortgage payment stays the same, like you're still going to be potentially penny pinching. Maybe it's not the best time to move. Maybe it is best to wait it out, right? So like everything comes to a halt. And if, you know, housing is one of the 5th biggest economic drivers in our country. If those wheels are not turning, like, you know, I hate to say it, I don't want to be pessimist because I don't have a crystal ball either. But, you know, I don't think it's far fetched to believe like there could be a potential recession for both countries on the way, based on the way this is going.
Just because of the decisions that they're making.
Yeah, because I think people are going to tighten up on spending. GDP is going to be in the tank. And that's going to be on both sides. You know, Americans are going to feel it's just as much. And it's just like you can say it till you're blue in the face, but it's like, you know, he just refuses to listen.
Yeah. This is going to be a big of a segue to it, but I think it might be perfect. Yeah, because then it becomes in terms of like, okay, your spending is less. Then do we see inflation get affected? Do we see it creep up again? You know, like
that's a good point, man.
What's going to happen? Because like, this is the big news for this week. And it's like the Bank of Canada dropped again for 4th, 5th consecutive time.
Yeah.
And
I think it might be more than that, but
since how many? It's been a couple of them. I need
anyway,
to go back to confirm it.
Matter.
But they needed to, supposedly, to what they're saying, because of what the uncertainty of what's happening. Everything's going to be more expensive, at least in a way, to drop the mortgage prices. But then, if things tighten up, if inflation starts to creep up, because like the norm, and right now it's an interesting point of conversation, because the majority of clients are like, well, or at least colleagues and agents and even bank representatives are saying, is like they're suggesting to go variable, which, and I can understand why, because it seems like we're riding the wave down, right? And I'll be the first one to admit it. I had 2 clients in December that they were fixed, and then we switched them to variable, and they're happy right now because obviously they're now paying less than they would have if they was fixed. If they would have stuck with the fix, you know. So like it's just kind of one of those things like, okay, but then what if the tides turn in that way?
It's so hard to predict, though.
Exactly, and it's so much uncertainty.
I think it's relatively safe to say, like, you know, we wouldn't see any potential increases until like fall or late 2025. I read an article that, you know, BMO's head economist is predicting, because of these tariffs, they're predicting that the overnight lending rate that now is 2.75. They're predicting that it could be as low as 2 or sub 2 by
the summer. You told me, yeah.
So it's like, you know, I want to stress, like, you know, people really only started paying attention to interest rates during the pandemic. If you ask, like, you know, a regular consumer what the overnight lending rate was before the pandemic, they wouldn't be able to answer you.
And it's not just the pandemic, but it was after the pandemic. After the Bank of Canada started,
when the hikes happened,
when the hikes started to happen.
But hear me out.
Not during, because everybody's like, oh, free money, basically.
Well, exactly, but we'd never seen interest rates that low, certainly in our lifetime.
No.
So,
and we'd never seen them increase that quickly either.
Exactly. So, when those types of sharp adjustments happen, it catches people's attention. If you look at the overnight lending rate today at 2.75, I actually believe that it might be lower than what it was in 2018 or 2019. We're basically sitting at a mid. What would you say like an average rate is today? Like 4.2, 4.3
on a variable.
Whatever, either or. Like what are the averages between
around
the
there?
two?
Yeah.
Right. So I mean, in hindsight, we're kind of sitting where we were post everything, but people are so rate sensitive that they assume rate goes down, that's a good thing. So my point is that, just to circle back, my point is that because rates are decreasing again so rapidly, and we said this before in another podcast, like if that happens, it's because stuff is hitting the fan. Is not necessarily good. Our economy's probably in the tank. And it kind of seems it's the way it's trending, right? So we're going to see more aggressive cuts. I think in order to stimulate an economy, you have to be sub 2. Like anywhere from 2 to 3 is kind of like, steady as she goes. But if you're trying to stimulate your economy, you want to be interest rate sub 2. And I think I bet you that's where they're going. And if I could put a crystal ball on it, I'll make a prediction right now. By when? By September or October,
you'll be at 2%.
It will be at 1.75.
Oh wow, that's a 1% drop from now to then. Jeez. Okay. Well,
put it in the bank. What is today? March 15th.
March 15th. I'll make sure to text you and
March
just be
14th.
like, here we go.
Yeah.
As a reminder.
So it's like, anyway, it's a lot to unpack, and I think it's welcome news from the Bank of Canada for anyone in the market, buying or selling. It's not a bad thing. Variable is probably the way to go, depending on your risk tolerance. But just don't ever forget
there's a taboo of it.
Yeah, I mean we've seen a lot. We've seen it. It's like a roller coaster.
Exactly, and that's the thing. It's like I ultimately, as my profession, this is what I present to both clients. They need to make the decision.
Sure.
All the clients lately, I'm like, this is what's trending. This is what could go in the right direction if it goes in the right direction. But you also have this, which is more of a safety net. So you kind of decide which one you want,
sure.
And some people don't want the risk. Some people are not willing. They're like, nope, we saw what happened.
Yeah.
We just don't want to even consider it. We prefer to budget to what is somewhat of a more secure aspect of it.
I respect
it. And
it.
that's the thing, like it's some people see it as a taboo based on what happened the last few years. Sure. And I can understand why. Personally, I would go variable, but I can tolerate that little bit of a risk of it.
Yeah, I mean, as someone who's sitting, I'm like, now my mortgage is going on 2 years into a 5-year term this summer. I think it's 2 years.
And you locked in at what?
4.69.
So you're higher right now, paying more than what you would at this moment.
100%, but I don't know what the fees would be to break and if it would be even worth it, right?
Yeah.
Maybe in this time next. It depends if the rates, but as I'm sure you can explain better than I can, as that delta becomes bigger between the posted rate and my rate, the penalties also become higher as well, correct?
Yeah. And I found out this week that it's crazy because you're always learning in this industry.
Sure.
There's some institutions that calculate their penalties differently than what you just mentioned, which is based on posted.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
There's some institutions that will calculate their penalties based on the Bank of Canada lending rate, or they call it ruthless. What is it that they call it?
It'd be like an extra point in their whole extra percentage point.
So I had a client.
Just so everyone knows, like typically a variable rate is the posted rate, which is the overnight lending rate, so 2.75 plus or
so
give or take.
So in this case, they didn't specify what they were calculating it off. They just said, I need to find the right terminology that they use for it, but it essentially being the bond yield of the 5-year government bond. That's how I took it, because I saw the number. I'm like, okay, this is what it probably would be, and compared to the rate that they had, divided by the time the mortgage amount that they had left.
Yeah.
Divided by the amount of years.
Okay.
Divided by 12 times the months. So they made that whole calculation. But the delta, it was from a rate of 6.94 to a rate of 2.15.
Yeah, that's a big penalty.
massive $10,000 in a penalty, and they had about a year and a bit left.
So the savings probably eliminated any.
He had to sell the home.
Oh shoot! Okay.
So it wasn't even the fact that he was transferring over to something else. It was just he had to sell the home. But it's like, and it kind of tells you, like, and it's, do you know that how I always say, like, the rate's not the only thing?
Of course.
It's like there's these little asterisks, and depending on the lenders, that
fine print,
is completely different. And everybody,
print.
you never, in the moment of buying, you never think of it.
No.
You never see it as like, oh, prepayment penalty, I'm not going to prepay.
No one thinks about when they're going to be moving as they're moving into something, right? Most
Correct.
people don't, I should say.
Correct.
Yeah.
But it's kind of in the sense of, like, most of the time, on average, clients will break a mortgage in year 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Name it, right? But this was just such a learning curve, because most of, like, for me, I don't necessarily see that, because that's usually based on the lawyer's office. The prepayment penalty, we see it, we see the numbers. We don't quite we understand how it gets calculated, but every lender is specifically different in that way.
Yeah, so you can't give a blanket statement on what that penalty is going to be.
Exactly. So what we always do is we always say, like, get a discharge statement, ask your lender what this penalty would be if you break this. So, but that one just kind of surprised me, because I'm like, I had always thought it was based on the posted rate. So when I got the client's email and the explanation, I'm like, oh, but nobody's giving that rate. Why are they calculating based on that? But then I saw the original commitment, and I saw their wording, and I'm like,
dang,
interesting, damn.
So let me ask you this then:
Let me see if I can find the wording that they use.
Is this client selling, for more than what they purchased for?
Yes, totally.
That's $10,000 of equity that they've just wiped clean because they have to pay this
exactly
fee. That's heartbreaking, honestly.
So this was the word that they use. Current reference rate.
Current reference rate. Wow.
So it doesn't even
never
state
heard that before.
Exactly. So neither it was not posted rates, because their posted rates are way higher than that.
Yeah, sure.
But the rate was from a 6.94 to a 2.63, comparable to 17 months remaining. That was the amount remaining. That the difference between the two rates was 4.31%, times the principal balance, which is 152, divided by 12, multiply 17 months of the existing term left. So $9,341 out of a penalty.
I feel bad.
And
for them, man.
me too.
Yeah.
But then it's wild. It's just eye catching, because it's, like I said, you don't never think of it.
Sure.
And this is the prepayment penalty. Like, imagine you're kind of counting on this money.
Who is a lender?
I prefer not to comment on
that.
It is
Someone
a lender I
shoot
work
me a DM
with,
if you want to
so
know. I'm going to ask him off camera, and I will tell you.
I'll know it going forward. Of like, I'll be cautious of this.
Yeah, of
because,
course
like,
you will.
And especially because of, it wasn't, we were already in our second term of this. Like, we renewed it, but we didn't talk about it when, and I don't want to put it on him in any way, but at the renewal, we didn't really have a conversation about it. He just kind of automatically signed.
Right.
Which is what I feel like a lot of times happens for clients. They just, oh, the bank offered me this, and just sign. Like, ask your broker if you talk to somebody. Ask your bank representative if you talk to somebody.
Yeah.
There's always room for negotiation. Always.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah. Especially with, anyone listening who has that renewal coming up, likely, many Canadians with a mortgage due.
No, majority. A lot of them would be due this year.
So you got to reach out and talk about it. You need to know, man.
It's a 30-minute conversation,
Yeah.
an hour conversation, call it. Your broker or whoever you're working with should have that time to dedicate to you in that way. And just give you options.
Yeah.
And if you're thinking of moving, if you're thinking of doing stuff, like, analyze what your long-term goals are. So for this client, he knew he was selling. If I would have had a conversation with him, I would have probably said, like, don't sign for 3 years.
Sure.
At that point, sign for 2, sign for 1, and then go one by one at that point. Keep renewing if that's the case.
100%. I think, in terms of, people are obviously making moves. It sounds like you've got a lot of clients that are transacting and moving up and moving down. We saw our numbers from the Ottawa Real Estate Board this week.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people were actually pretty surprised by it. I know, like, everyone is generally, not everyone, but there's a lot of people out there, the keyboard warriors of the world, that assume the bubble is going to pop and prices are going to come down.
I've been hearing that since 2020.
Yeah, well, I've been hearing it like since 2008.
I'm just saying, I've been hearing that since 2020.
Yeah, but the numbers are actually pretty surprising. So sales volume was down,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean it was down like 10% year over year.
Okay.
which is like I looked at that like
for the month of February.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, which was a bit of a shock because we had the craziness of the pandemic. 2023 was a bit of a slower year. 2024 seemed to be doing better. Like last year was like, this business as usual. It was a pretty steady market. So to have the year start off like with a 10% dip in sales for the first, the second month of the year, it was kind of like, okay, wow, like is this going to be the same trend? Which I think is very possible based on everything we spoke about today.
But can I put an asterisk on that?
Sure.
The 10% drop on sales, like my logic on that, it doesn't take into consideration that some of the prices that are in the market are not necessarily priced properly.
Yeah, fair. There's going to be lots of listings out there that are priced too high and are not moving. You're absolutely right.
So that's one thing that it doesn't quite factor into the equation of it.
Fair.
Of that,
fair.
Because it states one side of the story, in my opinion.
So you're right. Okay, but hear me out.
Okay.
Less than 1,000 homes were sold. It was like 800, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it was like 800 and something, 800 and change.
See if I can find it.
The sales to new listings ratio, which is another. If you look at those two things side by side, it's a pretty good indication of where we're at. It was about 48%, so it's still hovering around a very balanced market. 50% of the new listings that are coming to market are getting sold, and those are the listings that are likely priced properly, show well, are in high demand. Let's say the other half of those listings that don't sell are the overpriced listings, the ones that are maybe dragging sales volume down, that are not being absorbed as quickly as they could. Maybe they're overpriced, they don't show well, etc. So I think the two of those side by side, it still paints a pretty good picture that we're not in a buyer's market, we're not in a seller's market. Things are, it's almost business as usual with a giant asterisk on the side, like you said. The strangest thing about it all, like you would hear what I'm saying, you'd be like, okay, well, probably prices remained relatively flat or maybe came down if the sales volume was down. Well, on the contrary, prices are actually up across everything.
Yeah. And
I'm not talking like crazy amounts up, but I think, detached was up about 5% year over year, roughly like 1.5% month over month. Same with townhomes, same with condos. They're all kind of relatively in line. I think what we loop back to what we talked about at the beginning of the podcast with tariffs, price of steel and aluminum, price of wood, putting strain on our already strained housing market and housing supply. I got to believe that the main driver, maybe the only driver of those prices going up is that we just don't have enough homes.
But it's the kicker. It's always the same.
Yeah, but I know we talk about it. It's like beating a dead horse. I get it, but I think you'll see the same type of trends over spring market and into summer as well.
I think things might change if at some point this whole uncertainty changes.
I just don't think it's going to change.
But bear with me.
I'm here.
If this uncertainty, because like we're seeing the rates come down, so it means that they will be that motivation of like buyers getting off the fence of it. If we were to remove this uncertainty of the tariffs, the trade war, all this that's going on, and just kind of say like, okay, that settles down.
Well, I think if anything, things would trend up then.
Yeah, in terms of purchasing. Yeah.
Yeah, volume and prices.
Yeah. So it's gonna be quite interesting because like in a lot of ways, like I've seen it too in some clients that end up selling privately to their family. And they just don't put it in the market and just go with it privately and just like, okay, well, we're transferring over the retirement fund, they get sold, sell it, and but like a lot of the downsizers are not necessarily downsizing anymore.
No,
as much as they did before.
Can't afford to do it.
Exactly. So, and there's not much there in the market either too.
No, that's a very good point. Something that shouldn't be overlooked. Like I can attest to that. Like I have plenty of people that are actively looking for properties, and we're checking the MLS and what's upcoming every day, and there's just nothing coming up that fits their criteria.
Yeah,
it's tough, right? So we need more inventory to come in, but that hard to say if that would really solve any of our problems. Either if sales volume were down, and maybe more inventory would just lead to lower sale prices. It's a very delicate balancing act, and I think because of the supply and the demand is so out of whack that it's very hard to even predict that on a day-to-day or month-to-month basis.
Yeah, and that's the thing, we can't really predict what's going to happen for the rest of the year, just because I wish I had a crystal ball sometimes.
Yeah, I think the only thing because we're getting close to our time, but I want to just sidebar. This is not really real estate related, but I think it's important to call the elephant in the room out. It's something that's just been irking me a lot since I saw it on the internet.
Okay, tell us.
I'm going to pick on Trump for another minute here, guys. So this man, you know, he's tweeting, he's whatever, he's on his own social media platform, and he's it's like watching a kindergartner yell at world leaders from the internet. Like, you know what I mean? He's tweeting from his mother's
Hey, we
basement.
got 4 years of this. We're starting
Well,
off.
if you look at some of them, you're like, I can't believe a world leader, arguably the most powerful country in the world, is typing this crap out and posting it to the world to see. Like, it's insane,
we saw this for
man.
4 years previously.
But it's gotten a bit more unhinged.
Okay, fair.
You know what I mean? Like, if you yesterday, for example, it was like European Union is going to put 50% tariff on American whiskey. And he got out and he, like, all caps, was like, if they do this, I'm putting a 200% tariff on champagnes, wines, and liquors from the EU. And it was like, you know, the European Union was created as a leech to leech off Americans or something like that. It was something absolutely wild.
I didn't see that. I have to go back and see that.
Absolutely crazy. But anyway, not my point. My point is this. So this man, you know, he's got this vision for whatever he thinks America should be, and he's hung up on these tariff thing. He loves tariffs, thinks it's the best thing in the world. Like, he thinks tariffs are going to pad the pockets of the American government. If anyone has a brain cell and understands simple economics, they understand that that's not exactly how tariffs work. Tariffs are a tax that the consumer actually pays because the exporter, importer, you know, or the manufacturer increases their pricing. It's all, you know, if you buy a Canadian product in America, you're the one paying the tariff. You know, the state's not making the
consumer.
money.
Yeah.
You know, you're
The consumer is paying the extra difference of that.
Exactly, right? You know, it's not. It doesn't seem like a feasible or viable way to grow an economy.
As easiest way to do it is to say it is like it's a tax on a tax. Like,
yeah,
it's like another tax.
It's
basically
crazy, right? This guy's talking about bringing down pricing for his own country. You know, it's like talking about eggs and all this garbage, and it's just.
Well, they have a bird flu too going on, so there's a lack of
no,
eggs in some
he
states.
blamed that on Joe Biden or something, man. It's crazy how much he blames the left, and like, you know, no, not saying any side is right. I certainly don't side with Donald Trump, but anyway, this man is tweeting. He's putting all these the world markets, stock markets, even in the TSX and some of the Asian markets. We're feeling the ripple effects of some of this stuff. Like, I think they've wiped out like over $1 trillion from the U.S. stock markets.
Oh, wow.
Like, that's how badly they're down, because it's so volatile that, you know, a reporter asked him about a recession and he couldn't rule it out. So then everyone went, oh, geez. And so you got people that, you know, investing in real estate is one thing, you know, it's more of it takes a bit more of a long-term correction sometimes, you know, unless you're coming out of a pandemic or into a pandemic. But, you know, stock markets, it's even more volatile. So you had a lot of people pulling their money out once that was said. Like, you know, people are like, holy shit, if it's all going to become, if life's going to become more expensive, I better get my cash out of here, put it under my mattress in case, you know, I can't afford a carton of eggs in a month's time.
Yeah.
So he sends all this in. His best friend now, his buddy, Elon Musk, and I pick on Elon too. You know, this Doge stuff, whatever, right? Like, I'm not saying efficiency is a bad thing, but anyway, you know, apparently, like, there's a big boycott on Teslas with some of the left and obviously some of the government workers that were affected by this. Like, I'm told, like, a lot of his Tesla dealerships are being vandalized and that type of thing. But since all this happened in these world markets and this turmoil, the Tesla stock dropped like 15%, which is like $130 billion in value for Musk. Coincidence? I don't know, guys. The next day, Trump he tells everyone, and he's on national TV shopping for a Tesla on the White House driveway, saying like he's a great patriot, he's an American, everyone should go out and buy a Tesla. Trying to save his buddy's stock price, man. Like, this is crazy. Like, you can't write this. It's like we're living in some weird simulation. It doesn't even feel real. I can't make it up, man. It's just, I tell this to people and they're like, really, that happened? I'm like, yeah, it happened, man. This is crazy.
I didn't know that happened, actually.
Yeah, it's wild. So he's like shopping with Elon and Elon's son in the White House, being like, oh, this is a beautiful car. Like, oh, I love it. That's beautiful. Oh, man. Like, it's just wild, man. He actually bought one. You know, it's just to try to, like, it's just, anyway.
And the question lies, do you think he bought it, or was it gifted?
Who knows, man? Like, you know, I'm sure the man doesn't drive himself anywhere anymore. So, like, what is he going to do with it? Use it as a paperweight?
Yeah, that's the thing, too. It's like, I don't know. Honestly, it's, like you said, like, it's
It's we're living in a simulation, man. This
Yeah.
is not, we're on some weird,
Yeah.
like something happened. There's a riff in the time space continuum, and now we're on some bizarre timeline.
You know that joke or that jokes that say like the Simpsons are predicting the
Yeah,
future and
yeah,
stuff like that. It feels like we're kind of in the Simpsons.
And it's every day. Like
Yeah.
this is like you could. I'm waiting for the South Park episode on all this stuff. Like hopefully coming soon. I think it's gonna be hilarious. But anyway, that was just my rant for the end. I had to get off my chest. I'm sure if anyone's listening also notice that, let me know that I'm not crazy. Like, you know, is anyone out there seeing this stuff and like calling it for the BS that it is?
Yeah.
It's just like, you know, we try to be, at least in Canada, there's a little bit of more, you know, respect and
It's more It's more politics. It stays on politics.
but it's politics and business should be two separate things. Like Trump shouldn't be out promoting Tesla on the White House lawn. Like, this is crazy, man. You wouldn't see Mark Carney or Justin Trudeau, like, you know, buying a Toyota or a Honda.
The thing is, they don't really make that decision at the end of the day. That's a state decision, you know?
I agree.
That I think of, that I know of, at least. I don't know how politics works in that way, but like, at least.
It's you know, to be selfishly, because I think it is selfish when you promote your own friend. I mean, whatever you want to call it, a friend. This poor billionaire, the richest man in the world. Like, oh my God, everyone buy a Tesla. Like, his stock is crazy.
So my question to that is, did the stock improve after that?
Yeah,
it did.
Yeah, I think. But I checked it. It was end of day. It was up like 8 or 9%.
Oh wow!
Because you had guys on the Fox News anchors repeating all this stuff and be like, "Yeah, you know, I might go out and buy a Tesla today too." Like, it is absolutely wild.
That's wild.
And then the last thing I'll say about it, you know, is because he's in front of reporters on the White House lawn, being like, "It's the left that did this to Elon. You know, they're the ones boycotting these Teslas. Like, it's not fair to him. He's a good American. The left did." It's just, it's almost comical, man. Like, I just.
So when I was on my trip, I think I
Crazy.
told you this, but like I'll say it out there. There's a bumper sticker that people were putting on their Teslas, and basically said like, "I bought this before the owner went crazy."
Yeah, I've heard of those.
Oh man, that was funny.
I've
I
heard
was
of
like,
those.
okay.
And listen, man, I'm sure it's a nice car. I don't.
It is a nice car.
I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it. I
Right.
just think that it's less to do about what the actual product is, and more to do about this insanity that's circulating these markets, because you can't make it up, man. Like, you know, like I said, you wouldn't see, you know, Trudeau on the Governor General's front lawn, like being like, "Oh, Kraft peanut butter is so good. Everyone should go out and buy Kraft. We're not buying enough peanut butter."
It's a professionalism for sure.
Yeah, of course, man. Like,
Yeah.
we're not. Just I don't know what to say. Anyway, it's a heated topic for me. anyone else has any comments?
Politics was already. We're going out to have a beer. I have a feeling this is going to be a subject conversation.
Well, you know what? It's one of those things where you got to call it out for what it is, because
Totally.
if people are buying into that crap, then, you know, they're not thinking for themselves, because it just, in any other country or political party, you would never do something like that. Man.
Yeah.
This is wild times
Hey.
indeed.
And this just gets started.
Yeah,
This
it's
is
only
3 months in.
No,
Not
2.5,
even 2.5.
man, 2.5.
Oh
I
wow.
don't know how I don't know if I can do it.
Anyway, we'll see.
It was a good catch up episode. I don't know.
Yeah.
I hope you guys liked that. I liked it.
Yeah, we didn't have much of an agenda today. We just
We're just
swinging.
winging it.
Yeah.
Well, I think it was, you know, with a hiatus, it was kind of like, there was a lot to catch up on, so we got a bit of everything mixed in
Yeah,
there.
I got a couple of deals that we can talk about next week.
Yeah,
So
yeah. We'll get back to you guys with
we
some.
finally closed that nightmare of a deal.
Ooh,
So,
shit.
yeah.
Okay. Hopefully, we have some news on the other one too with the mutual client. We'll get back to more real estate next week, guys. We just it all affects us indirectly or not.
Yeah.
And if you're not sure about it, or you just want to chat more about whether it's politics or the economy or tariffs or housing, shoot us a message. Like, we genuinely love talking about this.
Yeah.
And, you know, even it's no obligation to ever buy or sell. If you just want to chat.
Just we
We're
can chat.
lonely, guys. Come chat with us. We want people to chat with us. No, that's it. We'll see you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. Adolfo?
Peace.
Peace.
Deuces.